The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guest today is Rick Byers, the MPP for Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound. And I have to say, well, Rick, it's a pleasure to see you again, literally, because I think the business of being an MPP can take you away at the last minute. We know that. We understand that. But, you know, it's good to see you in person and good to see you here because I've got questions.
Good. Well, great to see you as well. I know it's been a while, and yes, it's been busy, and we'll talk about some of the reasons it has, but always great to connect and appreciate this opportunity very much.
Absolutely. And just to remind people that this show also appears on Rogers TV YouTube, because so if you go to Rogers TV YouTube channel, you'll see, well, as we say, you'll live forever on the internet. So, Rick, what you say now will live forever. All right? So just so you know.
You're putting pressure on me, David, there, you know, but I will try to live up to that. But
okay.
Happy to have the dialogue. And we know that, you know, the issues are always ones that live forever and as well. So thank you for the chat.
Well, let's start right off the top. And we touched on this just before we started. And that's, did you expect this experience when you ran for MPP? I mean, I'll be honest with you, I have never seen the upheaval in Queen's Park that we've gone through in the last couple of years, well, since the last election. Did you expect this at all? Surely you didn't.
Well, it's funny. Finally, I've tried this political activity before, and I've been involved in the local association for a long time, and so what one would have expected that I would have had a sense of it all. But to be honest, until you're there, you're not there. And, you know, it's been 16 months, I think, now for me, and to being directly involved. And, you know, everything, you know, as folks will come to understand, I'm a slow learner to begin with, but a lot of the process, there's a huge amount of process involved in government. And it does take a while to understand that, whether it's activities at the legislature, question period, committees, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot, and it takes a while to understand that all, and that did take a while. And then as well, we're living in a period. I mean, COVID and this post-COVID period we're in. It's a huge challenge for governments everywhere, and so whether it's, and I know we'll talk about this area, whether it's the healthcare system, whether it's housing, whether it's the economy, other issues, we're all in this period of, you know, frankly, feeling the effects of COVID on an ongoing basis in a different way. And so that heavy policy agenda has been a big part of it as well. So yes, it's been busy, and I've been pleased I have a role as a parliamentary assistant to the Ministry of Finance. So that's also been an interest in getting involved there. So it's been a busy time, and of course, most importantly, the issues involved in our great community of Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound as well. It takes a while to understand them, and there's new ones every day. But all those things, I feel at least I get it. Does that mean we're doing everything perfectly? No, but at least I understand the process and doing all I can to get things done as best I'm able.
Sure, because you know, you make a good point with COVID. I mean, it upset the whole world. I've heard it said in many forums that we were doing okay, sort of, and then COVID hit, and that okay. And I know that's true of the province because the premier had to give leadership, and the province had to step up because the province has primary responsibility for healthcare. And hey, it was a time of test for just about everyone. So you're quite right. I've heard Alex Ruff say almost the same thing, that the learning curve as a member in the House in Ottawa is very, very steep. As I'm sure you have discovered, Queen's Park is equally steep.
It is indeed. And interestingly, I mean, it's interesting as well for me. I was a page down there at Queen's Park in 1972. So the first time I'd been back in the legislature was 50 years, as I'd been there before serving MPPs. And I mean, part of it is it's a beautiful, stunning building, and the history as well. And I got signed in and sworn in, and I think there have been about 2,000 MPPs in Ontario in total since Confederation. And I think I'm number 1937 or so. So all that you fit into this process, but everything is new, going in there for question period and making sure you're there for debates and participating. It's intimidating for a while because in part because of that history, you're standing in the, where historical figures in our province have been for a long, long time. And so, but after a while, you kind of said, look, what we're really here to do is get things done. The process is what it is. And there's some ways the legislature could work a lot more efficiently. But look, my focus is on the outcomes. What bills are we passing? What are we trying to get done? But it certainly has been a learning curve and I will say, a great pleasure and honor at the same time. It's an extraordinary place to be and an extraordinary group of folks to be with.
Well, you would have been as a page in the era of Bill Davis.
He was premier.
And it was the same kind of majority government. And I'm trying to remember who the opposition leader was.
Bob Nixon.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was Bob Nixon was leader of the opposition.
Bob Nixon.
Darcy McHugh was treasurer, Betty Stevenson in cabinet, and it was amazing. And period. In fact, subsequent years, when I was working in Ottawa for Michael Wilson, Bob Nixon was, I think, Minister of Finance, and he came to Ottawa for some meetings, and I saw him again in a different. He was a very good fellow. But yeah, I mean, extraordinary folks to see in action back there in the early 70s. It was really great.
I remember talking to a former cabinet minister in Bob Rae's government. She's now deceased. And she said that we really most people don't have an idea of what really goes on in the House, both Ottawa and in Queen's Park. Not that there's anything nefarious, but that the processes are so different. You have to appear for question period. You have to appear for votes. Your life is ruled by other things that you're not used to. And and you're a backbencher, you're not a cabinet member, so your profile is a lot lower, although you are a parliamentary assistant. So you do get, does that get you involved in policy making at the basic level? Or do you just kind of work with, do you just sort of sub for the minister when the minister's not available?
No, I'm involved in his process. In fact, Peter Bethlenfalvy's been great to work with, great partner to be with. There's two parliamentary assistants for finance, myself and NPP for Oakville, Stephen Crawford. And Peter, Minister Bethlenfalvy, has given us each some areas to be directly involved with ministry officials and his office team. So that's great. And it's a great opportunity. I've had a commercial background, so that was a nice fit for me too. But no, we're not just there when he's not. We're involved in areas, and that's been great as well because, it's a great way especially to learn actively about government, is to understand more how the money's spent and the process that's gone through. So very fortunate to be involved in that as well.
Did you find that as a parliamentary assistant that in your interface with the civil service or the public service that were there surprises? Because my experience and my understanding of working with the public service is they give you sometimes a buffet of options, and they will allow you to pick options, policy options. but they'll say, just a minute, here's the positives and here's the negatives, or here's the upside and here's the downside. Have you found that conversation to be very useful?
Well, it is, and I respect the experience among ministry officials is really deep, frankly, and they've got, whether it's in the tax policy areas or other areas or fiscal or economic branch, there's folks that have been there for a long time, and so they have the depth of experience in these issues for a long time. And whereas those of us, I'm a new face to them, and so quite rightly, they'll have that body of knowledge to draw from, which I find very valuable. I'll have views too, and hear it from folks in the constituency otherwise. But I'm very, and usually the number is 3. Here's 3 options, Mr. Parliamentary Assistant, and shockingly we'll often go for the one in the middle. But no, but I value their experience, and they've been very good and welcoming to me as well. And, the policy development process is ones where, listen, it doesn't matter what the issues are. You're going to have folks that are going to agree with you and disagree with you. It doesn't matter whether you're in favor of motherhood and apple pie or some other deep tax policy issues. That's important to be cognizant of, and so carefully consider the options. And that's why I value the expertise of ministry officials who've been there a long time and can provide. They're not the decision makers, in fairness. They know that the political level is, but they want you to be aware of options before we make decisions on those options. But it's been good to see that process, certainly.
Sure, and fiscal policy, which is your forte, I presume, is something that has huge impact not in tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, but often millions, or dare I say billions of dollars. You're not dealing with small numbers either.
They're huge numbers. I mean, the province of Ontario spends, in the league of $200 billion per year. And these, so the decisions that are being made now in terms of the amount spent, whether we run a budget deficit, try and balance the books, the level of debt in the province, all those things are factors and have an impact. And we've been through an era, I'll never forget, I was in Ottawa from 1987 to 91. And back then, the interest rates were ballooning, literally to almost 20% at some point in time. And I remember the level of interest costs on total government expenditures was about 1/3. So if you think about it, because of the high interest rates on the debt, 1 out of every $3 was paying to service the debt. And it's extraordinary. And that caused the government to make very, serious long-term decisions, and subsequent governments. Well, if you think about the current context, and now 15 years since the economic period of the end of 2008 or so, interest rates have been very, very low. And that's meant, the good news is the expense of interest is quite a bit smaller as a percentage. In Ontario, I think we spend about $13 billion or thereabouts on interest out of so call it 5 or 6%. But as interest rates creep up again, that becomes a bigger factor for governments to deal with. And so all these numbers go into the decision. And of course, going through COVID, out of necessity, we need to spend very, very big dollars on healthcare and other areas. So all these factors go into the fiscal projections and the assessments that have to be made. And so a lot of factors, important ones that are involved, not only for today, but if you think if we run, this is part of the thinking, the more debt you have on the books, guess who's really paying that? It's our kids and grandkids that have to deal with that interest burden in the future. So that's why it's important to have these, important discussions about what needs to be spent and what could be spent in other ways or different ways or more efficiently, perhaps.
Which leads me to another question about there has been in the past a fall financial statement. Will Mr. Minister Bethlenfalvy be giving us a fall financial statement?
Yes, fall economic statement will be coming up. Don't have a date for sure, but one thing that the minister has been very, very good at: quarterly financial reporting, and a budget in the spring, and a fall statement in the fall. And that level of openness and reporting is really a very strong part of what he's done and the culture of the government, to be open and with the numbers. And part of that as well, we're very pleased the Auditor General has given us, I think it's 6 years in a row, of a clean audit opinion. And so all that, people debate how the money's spent. No problem. We'll have different policy, but to be open and with the public and through regular announcements is an important part of the culture. So that fall statement, will be coming up over the next while.
So before Christmas.
Yes.
Okay. The calendar is always a clouded mystery until the announcement is made, of course, but fall suggests it'll be before Christmas. So that'll be good, something to watch for, obviously. But let's shift it a little bit, because you're an MPP, you're sitting in the House. Okay. You've been watching all the shenanigans that have been going on, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just there is, quite honestly, in the environment of today's legislature, a lot of conflict and a lot of back and forth. And what's it like to sit as a backbencher in that environment? Probably one you're not used to either.
No, it's very much different than the environment you see, and this is where you mentioned people coming to the legislature, and it's an intensely partisan environment. And it's interesting, you mentioned, when I was on that page back in 1972, there were no cameras. And so it was a different level of dialogue. And, we're living in a different world, not to say there shouldn't be cameras there, but I think that's made it how the information is conveyed a bigger part of it. And I think perhaps raised the level of intensity of the discussion and whatnot. So, look, for me, as I said, so all that, it's an hour every day between 10:30 and 11:30 in the morning. And 4 days of the week when the House is sitting, legislature sits. And it starts off with members introducing guests in the gallery. And so that's a great opportunity to identify folks who have come to see there in the legislature. And then the debate starts, and there's questions back and forth. And it's very controlled on a time-wise. So the leader of the opposition starts, and she has 1 minute to convey her question. And then the respondent has 1 minute to answer. She gets 2 supplementals, each of a minute, response each of up to a minute. So it's very structured that way, and back and forth. So you get an hour of usually there's a focus on some core issues, then others are raised and other members ask questions. But listen, I think at the end of the day, it's a discussion about the issues that are relevant to the people in the province of Ontario. And so that's fair game, anything that they raise, and our obligation to provide information about it. And so, yes, I sit on the back bench, although as someone, it's a sloped bench. So someone has said we're in not the back row, the top row. I like that, conveyance. But that's been another great part of it all, David, is meeting and you mentioned that, have there been any reactions of being an MPP first? You never know until you work with people directly what they're like. And we've got an outstanding team, and it's been great to get to know them over the last year plus. Members of the cabinet, members have been in caucus there before, and then a bunch of us new folks who have bring a lot of different experience to the team. So I've been really, really pleased to be part of that group, see them in action, watch their commitment to the issues is great to see firsthand. So it's, people can say, oh, politics is so phony and blah, blah, blah. And look, I won't suggest that we aren't at times we're giving our lines and our perspective, but I can see and commit and tell you firsthand that the commitment is so sincere and passionate among our team. And it's great to see that in action. I admire greatly all the work that's done and the energy that is put into that.
You find yourself reaching across the aisle to members of the opposition or the other two parties on certain issues from time to time?
I do, and we get requests from them. I mean, from opposition into the government, and I'm happy to have conversations. Everybody's different, and this level of partisanship, some kind of, are will maintain that. Others will say, look, that's who we are in the House. But listen, I've got this a question of constituent of mine. Would you be willing? So I'm happy to, and that happens on all the time. And that's a good part of it. Look, we'll disagree with the opposition, in areas fundamentally on issues. But at the end of the day, we're all serving our constituents and broadly serving the people of Ontario. So I have no problem at all having conversations about issues that they'd like to move forward and do whatever I can to see if we can get things done.
I have seen it in action that there is the upper level of dialogue, and I use that word loosely sometimes. There's an upper level that we see on the evening news, we read in the headlines, we see it on web pages, we see video clips, but that doesn't cover the kind of conversations that you just outlined, the one-on-one stuff. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning is the work of committees. And what committees are you on?
I'm on two committees. I'm on the Finance Committee and the Public Accounts Committee. And so both of those would have public accounts deals with reports from the Auditor General. And and so it's been Bonnie Lysyk she's retired now. We're looking for a new one. But reports from the Auditor General's office are reviewed by the Public Accounts Committee. And then the Finance Committee is a whole range of things. There's pre-budget consultations, there's estimates, there's a whole ongoing range of activities. And in that, it's also a partisan environment, but it's not like question period. There's more dialogue back and forth, and you'll have witnesses often, and it's more of a informed debate, if you will, on particular issues. So, but committees take up a huge amount of time, and this is one of the challenges you outlined. All the things to do. Committees, I didn't appreciate how much time they would take up. But for example, this coming Monday, the 16th of October, we got Public Accounts Committee meeting from 12:30 to about 4 o'clock. And so oftentimes they're meeting till later than that. Finance Committee meets from 1 till 6. And a few times we've even gone well into the evening. So all that to say, and there'd be some weeks there's 2 or 3 committee meetings a week. So it's taking up a significant amount of time. So all that to say, look, it's important to have the committee process there, and they're important issues, but requires you to manage your time and get because the other requirements of the job are still there to be done. So it's all a matter, and this is part of the learning process I mentioned, is managing all those commitments on your time and ensure you're getting things done as you should.
I just want also to point out that it's my understanding that the Auditor General, as well as the Ethics Commissioner, are people who are not partisan, but they are officers of the House. They are appointed they report to the legislature. They're not people who they're appointed for a long term. I think
Auditor General is actually 10 years.
Yeah.
And I don't know the Integrity Commissioner that term, but typically I would say I'd be surprised if it's not 5 or more. So yes, and you're absolutely right. They are officers of the legislature. So their reports were made public, and then the committee's role is to, ask questions of the auditor, and then have whoever the report is about come and present. And often this is as ministries, whether it's if the auditor did a report on the impact of climate change, for example, as she's done, then Ministry of the Environment would be there to make their statement and be available for questions from both the government and opposition members. So that's how that process works.
One of the things I really appreciate, and I'm going into the weeds here because I'm a bit of a policy wonk myself. One of the things I really like is that the Auditor General's report is, on one hand, you have the comments from the Auditor General and their staff, but you've also got the ministry's response. You've got, and this is a very, I think, a helpful way of presenting the information, because you've got the comments from the Auditor General and the ministry's response about how we're going to deal with this. And I've seen some. If you are wondering where people find a lot of this information, those Auditor General reports are actually quite rich. Quite rich.
They are. No, they are indeed, and you're absolutely right. There's a lot of material there, and they make the Auditor General makes a whole series of recommendations to the relevant ministry about the topic that has been reviewed. And so that is really what gets into the dialogue at committee. You know, how has the ministry responded to the auditor's recommendation? Have they, do they agree with the auditor's conclusion? Where does it go? What's the timeline? How many recommendations have been implemented, et cetera, et cetera. So it's an important dialogue to have. And you're right, a very in the weeds review of government policy and management, but it's appropriate to have it done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, let me ask you, change out of the policy wonk side of me, but ask you a question about your experience. You mean one of the roles of an MPP is to hand out money. I'm sorry to be so crass about it, but you do have the ability, and you said it at the very beginning, to present government grants to various organizations and in our healthcare system. Let me ask you a question. Since you've started, has there been any grant which has really left an impression on you as doing good work, or helps, where you walked away from that check presentation feeling, hey, this is really good. I'm glad to see this. This organization is doing good stuff for the people of Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound?
Absolutely. And in particular, there's an organization called the Ontario Trillium Foundation. Mm-hmm. And that is funded. In fact, they have a board that's comprised of volunteers, and organizations will apply for community foundation grants or other type of grants that the Ontario Trillium Foundation offers, all over the province. And one of the great joys I've had is to take to recognize the successful organizations who have received grants from the Ontario Trillium Foundation. And this is not, often it's not, it might be $20,000 or, these are not millions. They're typically, it's not zero, but tens of thousands of dollars. But the two things that's great is number one, seeing the impact of those tax dollars at work in the community directly is really a great privilege for me as MPP. And relatedly too, seeing our community in action. I think that's one of the great things about our life in Grey Bruce and life in rural Ontario is community organizations. There's a sense of community that's different than in urban areas. And it's such a joy to see the organizations in action to put those to use. So I've been to, legions and different organizations in the community, and just seeing the people who run the organization and who those people are and their commitment to getting things done. It's just been a great joy to watch. And until you see it firsthand, you hear a little bit about these organizations, but seeing it firsthand has really, really been a great joy and best part of the job.
Okay. Well, at this point, we're going to leave the best part of the job because we're going to take a break. So we will be back in about 90 seconds. I'm David Shearman. This is Politically Speaking.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details. You're watching Rogers TV.
Long way from Nashville, and mama, I tell you that. Performed from Montreal to Boston to Los Angeles. But Toronto, that's my chosen home. Sure, when I'm walking down Yonge Street, I see some funny people who have the nerve to point the finger at me. And grin and smile and whisper. My song was #2 on local radio. Sold 10,000 in Toronto alone. Turned down Ed Sullivan because they asked me to remove my makeup. Wouldn't do American Bandstand because of their segregation policies. I was just being me. Never tried to explain myself to anyone. And besides, none of that to worry, Jackie, because I know I look good. Got a new way of loving, baby. Thought I want to teach it to you.
Jackie Shane was a pioneer transgender soul singer, a central figure in the Toronto R&B scene. She helped shape what we know as the Toronto sound.
Hi, and welcome back to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guest today is Rick Byers, who is the MPP for Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound. And we were just talking before we came back about your new digs, Rick. You got a new office.
Yes, very excited. We're in the Greystone, which is 8th Street and 3rd Avenue East, right in downtown Owen Sound. We have my staff was great in getting this new office organized, and great to have this facility right in downtown Toronto. Owen Sound, and lots of parking here for folks to come and visit. And we're in a building that has other mostly medical businesses here, but it's great to have it done, because anytime you move, as you always know, it's a big job. But so thankful for my team in the office for getting that done.
Now, to our viewers, if anyone wonders where the Greystone building is, I will tell you. It is right across the street from the Harb in Owen Sound. So if you know where the Harb is, Rick's office is right across the street. And if you really want to know old history, it's right next to where Beach Brothers was. So there you go. You're too young to remember the Beach Brothers bar and hotel, I think, Rick. But those of us who've lived in Owen Sound for any length of time will know where those places are.
Interesting.
But oh yes, there are stories. There are stories. You have you're in legendary territory in your new office.
Okay,
So,
we'll have to understand that better.
yes, very interesting histories. Very interesting. No matter where you go in this city, including your office.
Oh, it's great. Well, it's a great community, and great to be involved in it. And great to have our office right in downtown.
Well, I think it's also interesting to note that the reason you had to move was because your landlord said, "I'm converting this office building to apartments or to condos." So it was turned, offices became housing. And that was actually the original Board of Health or health unit building when I moved here to Owen Sound. Okay. That was where the health unit was located. And I have a vague recollection there was a couple of other businesses in there. But the health unit was there, and it's, of course, down on the waterfront now. So but when people say the MPP's office is in the old health unit building, no, it's not. It's further down the street on the opposite side of the river. So
yes, it was a great location over there, but we're still right downtown, and great to be here. So okay, that's.
By the way, if you hear a ding dong, it's not the quorum bell, not the call for quorum, and there's a vote. That's Rick's doorbell.
Yes. We have in our new office, it's the front door that lets you know when people are coming in to have issues. And what I will say that we've got Karen, Lisa, and Julie here who were with Bill Walker. We've got a tremendous team. And it's just I'm so grateful for that, because, their experience in the community and understanding the priorities, but how to manage them has been a great pleasure for me to work with them. But so people do come in directly and say, "Hey, listen, I've got this challenge. Can you help me with?" Or they'll phone, and so that's the doorbell ringing. And so thank you for your patience. It's not a call for a vote.
Right. It's not a quorum call. The other thing is that you also work, and Alex has shared this with me on when he's been on, that your staffs do actually work well together, because you've got to be clear on division of powers. You can't touch immigration, but you can refer people with immigration questions to Alex's office, and if there is an issue that is under the provincial, for example, a health card. A health card is not something that Alex's office can deal with, but your staff can give people assistance. So
that's exactly right, and it's so important to have people speaking with the right level to help them with their needs. And so, no, I'm pleased to see Alex's office and my office work so well together. That's important for us and for the community.
well, let's change the subject a little bit, because one of the things that I'm sure that your portfolio as parliamentary assistant is dealing with on an ongoing basis, as is the whole government, is housing. And housing is a critical issue. It's absolutely critical here in this constituency. Don't care where you go, housing is critical. The government had plans that have had to be changed. Where are we going on the housing file? And I recognize there's some things you can't say, but where are we headed on the housing file in general?
Well, it is a huge priority, and I reflect back and put it into context a little bit. Here's the difference between us as baby boomers, the opportunity we had versus the current generation. I know that when we started our careers, you could find a job and find a place to live, and that math worked. Yes, there were periods of challenge, high interest rates, et cetera, but the situation where we got now with prices having really exploded and all, I like to think I'm a commercial person. We've got, my wife Margot and I have 3 boys in their late 20s, early 30s. And when COVID first hit, I said to them, "Oh, this is great. Prices are going to come down, so you'll be able to afford a house." Wrong. Couldn't have been more wrong. We've seen prices really take off. And so the fundamental challenge we have, not only for the younger Ontarians, but also the new Ontarians, is the math doesn't work the way it used to. And accommodation is not affordable. So what our government is doing is we're committed to building 1.5 million new residences over the next 10 years. And that'll be a whole mix of residences. Important, there'll be a focus on affordability that hasn't been there before. But overall, there'll be a lot of new homes constructed, and the vast majority of those will be in existing municipal and urban boundaries, whether it's here in Owen Sound or other communities in the bigger centers of Ontario. That's where you're going to see intensification, basically, using existing infrastructure to have bigger communities within those areas. So that's the thrust of the program. We've had several housing bills passed in front of by the legislature to move that along. And this is not an easy area. I mean, look, all levels of government are involved in different ways, municipal, provincial, and federal. And, if it was an easy issue, we wouldn't have this problem. And so that is the thrust of what we're doing. Now, as part of that, as you know, initially there was a portion, 50,000 of those 1.5 million, or just over 3%, were going to be on lands that had been on the Greenbelt. That was our initial position. And, it's interesting as I've reflected on that, this issue, we were taking 7,400 acres from the Greenbelt, which was about 1/3 of 1%, 0.36%. And the biggest chunk of those land was near the city of Pickering. And Pickering has wanted that land close to their city that was in the Greenbelt for over 20 years to develop it. So that was the biggest chunk of it. So on the thrust of it, I was comfortable with having a very small percentage, 0.36% of the Greenbelt, used for housing that is so badly needed now. But the challenge was in how we identified those properties, which was just simply not done properly. Anytime you're going to change a boundary of a property, all of which was privately owned and has been for a long time, the value changes are huge. And so that means it's all the more incumbent to have a clear, a public process with criteria handled by public servants, et cetera, et cetera. And clearly that didn't happen. And so I'm pleased that the government changed its view. We're not developing that even more. In fact, we're about to introduce legislation that will put the Greenbelt into legislation, and any changes required would be legislative rather than regulatory, which is where it's being. So we're on, we're continuing to move forward on that priority of getting homes available for Ontarians in the decade ahead, and it's a big job a big priority for the government.
Rick, you're an accountant. You're a numbers guy, and as you said, the old way of doing things doesn't work, or the math isn't working right now. It may never. There are proposals out there for different forms of financing, and things like community bonds, community land trusts, a variety of options. And I know that AMO has proposed them, that Roma has proposed them. There's some very learned people raising these questions. Is the government considering any of these different forms of financing? One that I know that we've used in other provinces, because I was heavily involved at one point, are leased lands, where you lease the land on a long-term, believe it or not, a 999-year lease, and your price is fixed, and there may be the lease terms can be negotiated or whatever. But are there alternatives being thought of besides home ownership, conventional mortgage, classic down payment, these kinds of things? Cooperative housing.
Sure, but when you talk about leased land, who's the landlord? I mean, that's where, yes, and there have been big parcels of land owned either by the province or other levels of government, which can be looked at in different ways. And so will we consider options? Certainly we will. But the vast majority will be built on development. What we fundamentally want to do is get the supply of housing increased, and so that the math that has consistently works well again, and people can afford with their income. And this is why I mentioned we've actually just recently as well made a definition of the affordability home. So it's based on income and whatnot. So that'll be a factor as well. And we want to just see more affordable homes. I mean, look, people have debated, well, shouldn't governments buy and build and own those homes for affordable? And yes, you can debate those, but the scale of what's needed, there just isn't the land on that scale broadly available, community by community. So we need to have incentives in other ways to ensure that affordable homes are available for those that need them and want them. So it's a whole range that will be moved forward, but that'll be our plan and our priority.
What about non-market housing? Because we talk all about market housing, but non-market housing, sometimes referred to as social housing. And this, I recognize, this is a federal and a provincial partnership, a municipal partnership. I mean, right here in Owen Sound, and Grey County, it's municipal. Is there any potential there? Because I know the need for geared to income, affordable housing is absolutely incredible. And are there any? Is that under consideration as well?
Well, that'll all be part of the broad plan. And this is the thing is that, and this is where I've met with the county and over the last months to understand and work with them to have our mutual priorities move forward. Because you're absolutely right. It is a priority for our Grey County community and to see what we can do here to ensure that those type of homes are available. So, but the broad swath of the housing is going to be, developed as has been traditionally done, and we're confident that we're also in a period of where interest rates are higher than they have been, And that's an adjustment as people have bought over the years. They're redoing their mortgage, and that's part of the affordability challenge we're facing right now. I'm hopeful that, as inflation stabilizes, those interest rates will be drifting down again, and that will help the affordability question as well. But fundamentally, what we need is more homes. Canada has the lowest number of homes per capita in the entire G7. That just puts it in perspective. And, so we have to deal with it, and not an easy one, as I mentioned before, but we're determined to have this implemented properly and have these homes available for folks in Ontario.
One of the things that I have heard said about our current housing crisis is it's not just emerged. This has been 30, 40 years in the making. And it was based back on some decisions which were made in the period you mentioned, early to mid 1990s, and they may have been made for good reason then, but we're dealing with the result now. That they're and we just have to deal with it. I think what's also interesting to note is you are talking in a term of years. This is not going to emerge fully formed instantaneously. We're talking a period of several years, and I've heard you use 10 years.
That's the whole program. We certainly hope it won't take 10 years to get this problem solved. And some of these are economic factors. And, again, COVID has had an impact on this all. Like I said, I made the absolute wrong call on how I thought the market would go. But here, again, we've seen in rural communities where COVID initiated a work from home as an option, that spurred growth and demand from urban folks moving to Grey County and Bruce County and otherwise, spurring demand for housing, and the cost went up. So there's so many factors at play here, and that have been around for a long time. And, they're always going to be there. Fundamentally, we just need to deal with the big challenge, which we view as not enough supply. So let's get at it. And when these challenges emerge, that's where levels of government and housing, as I said, is all levels involved. Let's work together for our common residents and try and deal with this problem. But yes, it's a long-term horizon, but we sure hope the impact will be shorter than that period.
Sure. Well, let's switch it up a little bit, and because I wanted to ask you before we run out of time here about healthcare, because I happen to be working in Durham right now. And I know the people down there are very concerned about the fact that their ERs are closed. Chesley, Walkerton, ERs are closed on a regular basis. People have to drive to either Hanover or Mount Forest or Markdale. Now, wonderful new hospital in Markdale, but are we going to be looking? Rural hospitals have been hit hard through COVID and post COVID. What's the plan, or what's the word on ER closures to rural hospitals?
Well, fundamentally, what we've had is in the healthcare system, COVID triggered as the amazing commitment and dedication of the healthcare community through that piece. It resulted in actually a number of folks leaving the profession, whether it's doctors or nurses or others. And so here we are in that time of post-COVID with the need, still significant, with the staffing levels that are not what they were. And so that's the biggest challenge we've had, and we're doing a number of big important things to deal with that, and increasing education for doctors and nurses. 2 new medical schools opened, one in Brampton and one in Scarborough, but those will feed all of Ontario. Here in our community, Georgian College has nursing education, which is so important. Have those nurses learn locally; they're more likely to stay here in our community. And so, over the longer term, and those are longer term solutions, we will increase again the supply of healthcare staffing. We've also recognizing credentials from other jurisdictions more quickly than has been done in the past. So all those needs are there. And it's been a big challenge. I will say Bright Shores Health System, formerly Grey Bruce, they, in their 6-hospital network, have had no closures, right? And so there's a mixture in the various community environments here, and certainly Chesley, Walkerton, and Durham have all had substantial levels of closures. And listen, I completely understand the concern in the communities not having certainty over the opening. In fact, in Chesley, the closures started in the fall of 2019 before COVID. And so this part of the challenge, of the, staffing level, can we make sure that those healthcare professionals are coming to our rural communities? And it's, each segment is different, but it's certainly, frankly, the number one priority I have to continue to work with Ontario Health, with the Ministry of Health, and our municipal partners to get residents the consistency of healthcare that they want to see.
Is that will obviously, we hope, include family physicians, because the number of people who are without a family physician these days is astonishing, and they're dependent upon things like virtual urgent care, which there was a rumor that it had been closed at Grey Goose Health Services. I'm not sure that's true, but things like that, and the prescribing or allowing pharmacists to prescribe more for more conditions is perhaps a change. But what else is the government doing to address the physician shortage that we have?
Well, what you've talked about is exactly right, is that, the focus through COVID was really on the acute care network, i.e. hospitals, as it had to be. But what's happening, and I will say, look, at the COVID performance was by the whole community was incredible, and we saw that in the rates of success we had here in Ontario versus surrounding jurisdictions, particularly in the United States. But it still has left us with a big challenge, and so what we are doing is really the primary care network has so many different participants in it, whether it's family physicians or home care and support services or other elements, and that this is an ongoing priority for us, is to find not only the doctors, but those other participants. And you probably saw an increasing emphasis on home care from us, a commitment of, I believe, $1 billion over to build out that network. But so this will be, because the other challenge we've had is when people don't have primary care resources, they go to the hospitals for, where they shouldn't be going there, and that adds to the pressure at those facilities. And so it's a full network solution that's needed. Communities are different, and so it's a regional type of approach that needs to be taken. But I can assure you it's a key priority for our government, increasing the staffing, look at different approaches to family health care, primary health care, ensuring that as much as possible virtual care continues to be available as needed, so that people have the care that they need when they need it.
Sure. Well, I guess the proof of the pudding will be in the eating, or dare I say it, in the healing. So we'll have to wait and see, because I hear stories. Although the flip side of that is that time and again, I've had people say to me, I had a diagnosis, and it's a serious diagnosis, and I was amazed at how quickly I was treated in London or Toronto, or even here in Owen Sound. I recall one woman telling me that she had a very, very serious diagnosis, and was all the treatment was done in Owen Sound. And she said, and it turned out it was much better than I thought, and I was astonished at how quickly it went. So, it does. There are some upsides to it.
And you make a great point, David, and that we can't lose sight of the fact that fundamentally the care is very good. Are there challenges? Of course they are, and we are working on those. But we tend to hear mostly about the problems, but fundamentally the system, the care that we get is very, and it's great that you mentioned those examples. I've heard them too, and the care that's available is excellent, and folks are delivering great service. However, our job is in government is to look at the areas that aren't working well, and certainly there's lots of ongoing work to do there. We're making progress, though. The surgical backlog, which really rose through COVID, is now down to pre-COVID levels, and so many other areas of success. And this is one of we started off talking about the COVID period. The post-COVID period has meant, whether it's in healthcare or airlines or travel, lineups everywhere. And it's taken a while to get those, to keep working at those and getting them back to the way they should. So this is why I say that this COVID period has had such a huge impact in so many ways. And it, taken longer to get through it than I think we all had imagined, but the job is still out there, and we got to keep working until it's done right.
Well, let's be really blunt. You've got 2 years. 2 years. Sorry to break the news to you, Rick, but you've got 2 years.
Yeah.
More or less.
It's very true, but you know what? Having not been there before, but for me, it's all the priorities continue. This is why I say we've got an attitude among the team to get things done. Truly, and yes, there's the show of politics if you want, and government, and you got to have the right. But fundamentally, there's a culture to deal with these big challenges. And look, I think that you might say, okay, we've got 2 years, that's pre-election time. Well, hey, for me, it'll be, right up until voters cast their votes. I hope we're still getting things done, because it's not good enough to say, well, I won't deal with that problem because it's election time. No, people expect you to keep working on the priorities right through the piece. So we'll just do this. None of these issues we've talked about housing, we talked about healthcare, the economy. All these are major issues that this government and others, of course, are having to deal with. So we're going to keep doing whatever we can, hopefully make the right decisions, and hopefully see some outcomes that will benefit folks. And then when they go to cast their ballots, that they can make their judgment about whether the government deserves support or not. But we'll be focused on getting stuff done.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, because you and I will have further conversation. That's absolutely certain, because now, and by the way, I don't keep score. I don't keep score. But the only one I did keep score on with Bill Walker was the Markdale Hospital. And I said to him, I teased him because he retired before the Markdale Hospital opened, but I noticed in the pictures he was there.
Yeah.
So,
as he should have been, and it was a delight to have him there. And Bill was working on that pretty well from his get-go as an MPP in 2011. And that just shows you the challenges. Look, I'm delighted with the focus our government has. We have a long-term infrastructure plan. But seeing it actually happen is so extraordinary. To have the Premier and the Minister of Health and Bill Walker there on September 14th, I think it was, for the official ribbon cutting. It was just a beautiful, beautiful day. And that facility is absolutely stunning. And that is what, frankly, it's so motivating for me as an MPP to see that directly, because that's an important part of what we're trying to do, is get the infrastructure going.
I hate to interrupt you, Rick, but on that note, we got to go. Rick Byers, MPP for Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound, thank you. And thank you, friends, for being a part of Politically Speaking. Yes, we'll talk again.
Thank you very much.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Lovely viewers, it's your host of On the Couch, Antoine El Hashim, reminding you to tune in for every episode of Season 9 of the longest running and most loved local queer talk show on Rogers TV. Check it out.
Social media giant Meta is blocking access to news in Canada.
Ongoing dispute over the Online News Act.
Less news on your social media feeds.
For up-to-the-minute information, connect with City News anytime, anywhere at citynews.ca.
Questions are being raised.
Or by downloading the City News app.